Hello everyone. In this video we're going to talk about culture. One way to conceptualize culture is that culture are the things that a society creates. Culture is ways of thinking, ways of acting, and objects that a society makes. And societies make lots of cultural elements. They're separated into two categories. The first is material culture, which are the tangible things that you can put your hands on, you can put it in your pocket, you can lock it away in a safe, the tangible aspects of what society makes, and non-material culture. These are the ideas, the concepts, ways of thinking, ways of acting, norms, belief systems, things that you can't put in your pocket, things that you can't lock away in a safe. So some examples of material culture would be the musical instruments that are played in a society. Non-material culture would be the music that comes out of those instruments. We can put the instrument itself and touch it and feel it and lock it away, but the music that comes out of it is intangible, right? This is non-material culture. Another example of material culture would be the kind of food in a society, right? Different cultures have different types of food. These are things that we can see, we can taste, we can touch, we can smell. Non-material culture would be things like religion. Different cultures often have different religions, different beliefs about what the world is, where we all come from, where we go when we die. These are examples of non-material culture. Within any culture, including the United States, you'll have examples of what we call the dominant culture, which is the culture and cultural traits and characteristics that are practiced by the majority of the people or the dominant people in that society. The culture that you see represented in television shows and other media, these are often representations of dominant culture. Dominant culture is often thought of as the default culture for a society. Along with that are subcultures. And subcultures are cultural patterns that are in line with dominant culture. They aren't rejecting dominant culture, but there is something about them that sets them apart. For instance, gamer culture is a subculture that is aligned with video gaming. You'll see hip hop culture, which is a culture that is associated with hip hop music. So largely, they follow the same dominant cultural patterns, but they do have something about them that sets them apart. Right? They aren't in contrast to or in conflict with dominant culture. Biker culture, people who ride around on Harley Davidson motorcycles, could be established as a subculture, talked about as a subculture. Okay, so there's lots of different types of culture, and more are discussed in your textbook. But think about culture in these kinds of ways to get a good understanding. And when we look at culture, we often have preconceived notions of what is correct, what is better or worse, and often these things are grounded in what is known as ethnocentrism. So it's often the case that people perceive cultures based on their own culture. So when we perceive some different culture, we kind of rate it as how it is familiar with our own. So when you see cultural patterns, if you travel to other countries and other societies and you see cultural patterns that are radically different than the cultural patterns that you're used to, a person might interpret those cultural patterns as being less than, or that society as being less than, because those cultural patterns are so unfamiliar. Now, this is an incorrect way of thinking about culture, thinking about society, and thinking about people. Because there is no natural culture. There is no one kind of way. People in different societies and people in different parts of the world establish the type of culture that they established. There is no hierarchy here. Okay? There is no better or worse, no more or less when it comes to culture. In the United States, we see lots of different cultures represented simultaneously because the United States is the most multicultural of all high-income societies. We have more different kinds of cultures represented here in the United States than any other high-income nation. And that's on purpose. Our society was designed to be that way. And what makes that interesting is that as you go about your day, you might hear various languages, you might be able to sample various kinds of food, you might see people dressed in various different kinds of cultural dress, and it's the kind of thing that you can experience in a multicultural nation that is much more difficult to experience in a nation that is not as multicultural as we are. But again, the United States is the most multicultural of all high-income countries. An important part of culture is symbols. So you see symbols every day. And anytime you get into your car and you drive somewhere, you are able to do that because of the symbols that are around you. Those symbols would be the red, yellow, and green on the stoplights. They would be the stop sign. They would be the different colored and whether they are solid or dashed lines in the road. These are different symbols that allow you to participate in the activity of driving. And these symbols are rather obvious. Your blinkers are symbols that you use to communicate to the people around you that you're going to make a turn this way or that way. Your brake lights is another symbol. But there's more symbols that are not so obvious. Anything can be a symbol as long as a group of people attach a shared meaning to it. So we can make anything a symbol. So what we see in the slide here with this young boy giving the thumbs up, this is a symbol, right? This is a symbol that means happy, something positive, something good, right? And in contrast, this is a symbol. This means something. And symbols are created all the time, especially with the advent of the smartphone. We see new symbols being created all the time. And entire strings of communication happening exclusively through symbols. It's not uncommon to see people communicating with emojis in their text messages. Each one of these emojis symbolizes something else. And the meaning of those emojis can change. Right? So over time, the emoji that starts as one thing and means one thing might change to something else. This shows us that there is this constant evolution, constant definition and redefinition of symbols that is always taking place. And again, it's always just based on the shared understanding of what that particular symbol means. There is no better symbol. There is no worse symbol. Symbol is a symbol is a symbol. Okay, there's nothing that makes a symbol better or worse than anything else. It's just anything that has a shared meaning among a group of people. Okay, anything could be a symbol. When we talk about and look at different societies, we can see that a symbol that has one meaning in one society might mean something completely different in another society. So this thumbs up gesture, it's possible you could go somewhere and this thumbs up gesture might be a way that you would insult someone. Certainly that is the case with this gesture. Okay? And this gesture here in the United States is something rather benign. It means peace. Sometimes people use it to say hello or goodbye or just an acknowledgement that they've seen a person. In other societies, this is the way of giving a person the middle finger. Okay, so symbols across societies can be different. What's interesting to look at also, though, is that in our own society, within our one society, there are different groups of people who will interpret symbols differently. For instance, let's look at this next slide. This is just a collection of images that I grabbed off the internet and threw up on this slide. Now, when you look at these different images, all of these things symbolize something, but the meaning might be different for the different people who are viewing the symbol. Some of these things symbolize wealth. Some of these things symbolize power. Some of these things symbolize fear. Some of these things symbolize oppression. Some of these things symbolize different things for different people within our own class. So again, there is no hierarchy of symbols. There is no better or worse symbol. Symbols are anything that carries meaning to a group of people in a society. So when you ask people, what does the Confederate flag mean? Well, you might get answers that range from, that means heritage, that means history, to that means enslavement, that means subjugation, it means racism, right? Within our one society, we have these different interpretations. When you look at the police officer's uniform, what does that mean? Well, that means safety, it means protection, it means justice, it means law and order, it means violence, it means oppression, it means fear, it means danger, right? These different symbols carry different meanings. This is just a random collection that I've picked, that I've chosen here. But again, anything and everything is a symbol. The clothes that you decide to wear, how you decide to present yourself, how you decide to wear your hair. Do you have body piercings? What do those things symbolize? All of those things carry meaning. And it's important to understand the meaning that they convey, because this is how, and to understand how people are interpreting those meanings. Because this is how people see you. And this is how you see them. And this is how other people see the world. And understanding how and why people interpret symbols in the way that they do can give us an insight into their understanding of society and their relationship with it. Continuing on, an important part of culture is a culture's values and belief systems. So values are these culturally defined standards of what people decide is desirable, what people decide is good, what people decide as beautiful, what people decide is wrong to do, or what is justified. These are the broad guidelines that people within a culture use to decide how to go about their life. And these are different from beliefs. Okay? Beliefs are not these broad guidelines that people use to go about their life. They are specific ideas about specific things that people hold to be true. Sometimes these things are in harmony with one another. Sometimes they conflict with one another. They always will change over time. And of course, between different cultures, we will see different values and belief systems. Let's take a look at the United States and some of the key values of the United States. In the United States, we have these key values. They include equal opportunity, achievement and success, material comfort, activity and work, practicality and efficiency, progress, science, democracy and free enterprise, freedom, individualism, and racism and group superiority. Now, this is not a comprehensive list of all the key values in the United States, but this is a list that contains many of our biggest ones. Now, to highlight just a couple here, individualism is a very important and very powerful value within the United States. The United States perhaps is not the only country that has the key value of individualism, but it is arguably the country who believes in that most strongly. That the individual and what matters about the individual is of utmost importance. Remember, during the COVID epidemic, the conflict that arose with the wearing of masks. the wearing of masks became this political controversy. Who wears a mask? Who doesn't wear a mask? You can't make me wear a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask. This goes back to this concept of individualism. That I can decide for myself what I will do, period. Masks were sold to the public as a way to protect the people around you, right? You've probably heard the message lots of times. Put a mask on, not necessarily for yourself, but for everyone else. Well, this is exactly the wrong way to sell this idea to the American people because of this key value of individualism. If the masks were proposed to people as this is to protect yourself, we would likely have seen much higher participation in using of masks because of this concept of individualism. Protecting other people relies on a concept that is not on this list of key values, known as collectivism, which is not one of the key values of United States culture. Not one of our key values, for better or worse. It is individualism. Okay? Now, the reason why this screenshot of American Idol is included here on this slide is because, like many extremely popular television shows, American Idol embodies many of the things from this list of key values, which is one of the reasons why it's so popular. There is equal opportunity in American Idol and shows that are like that. Anybody can have their chance to be on the show. If you wait in line long enough, you can be on there. You don't have to be somebody's brother or somebody's cousin or know the director or be friends with the producer. Anybody can have their chance. Okay? And we could go down this list and we could list off and identify how these key values are connected to shows like American Idol and The Voice and America's Got Talent and all that kind of stuff. But the reason why they're big and popular like that is because they resonate within us because we've been taught these key values our whole lives. So when we see those values represented in our media, it resonates within us. And we think, wow, yeah, that's great. Look at all these things that are happening in here that I really value, whether or not that's happening front of mind or not, right? It's resonating within us. These values that we're looking at here help to guide what we define as our norms. And norms are rules and expectations that we are expected to abide by as members of society. And they are divided into two parts. There are norms that are called mores, and there are norms that are called folkways. So norms that are mores are norms that have some moral significance. So we do that behavior or we don't do that behavior because it is morally correct or incorrect to do that behavior. Folkways are norms that are not connected to morality. So if we met in person and I waved at you to say hello and you saw me do this and you looked at me and then turned away instead of looking at me and waving back, well, you would have violated a folkway norm because the norm is that if we meet each other in person and I wave at you and we know each other, you wave back at me. You don't ignore my wave. Okay? Now, is there something morally wrong with what you have done? No, you haven't violated any morality, but it was kind of rude, right? These are folkways. Let's say I wave at you. You don't wave at me, so then I get really upset and I run up and I approach you and I grab your jacket and I start, explaining to you and yelling at you about how angry you have made me. Okay? Well, I have violated a norm now too, and my norm violation is more severe. I have violated a norm that is connected to morality, right? I have breached your personal space. I have put my hands on you or on your jacket or clothing, and I have accosted you with my loud language. Okay? So again, mores are those kinds of norms that are connected to morals. Folkways are those kinds of norms that are connected to what's polite. One way that I think about this is mores are the difference between what is right and wrong, and folkways are the difference between what is right and rude. Okay? Norms, different kinds of norms. So far we've gone through culture, the different kinds of cultures, subcultures, symbols, the different kinds of symbols, what makes a symbol, that there is no hierarchy of symbols, values and beliefs, especially within the United States, and key values and individualism, and norms. Okay? In the next video in culture, we'll talk about the theoretical applications of culture. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the feedback comments below, and I'll see you next time.